Welcome back to Norath. Today we're on the Mischief server. I started a Cleric and working through the Newbie yard, getting her to about 5 is the goal. Clerics get a undead nuke at level 4 and they get their first undead hammer at level 7. So that is the ultimate goal, but we're only going to be in the Newbie yard till level 5. I could run back to Plane of Knowledge at 4 and get a nuke spell, but I don't really think it's worth it since I'm staying only till 5. I took a small break from the hero's journey and decided to go back to live for a little bit and play some of the content that I've missed over the years. So Mischief is one of the more popular TLP servers. It's fairly well along. It just entered the Darkened Sea, which is the expansion that increases the level cap to 105. So it's a 3-month-long expansion on Mischief. The way Mischief does the expansion the expansion releases is you get 2 months for a non-level cap increase expansion, and you get 3 months for a level cap increase expansion. The reason they do that on the level cap increase expansions is so that you have time to get through catching up on your levels. Start with some of the AA, there's level 2, get through the group content, get geared up, and raid, all in that compressed 3-month cycle. Remember when these were coming out, there were a year in between expansions, usually sometimes 6 months early on with Sony, but then it became about once a year. So you really need that extra time when those level cap increases go up to be able to catch your tune up, get some of the AA, get through the group content and some gear, and then be able to start raiding. So they give you extra time to do. So why Mischief? Like I said earlier, it's one of the more popular TLPs. It's kind of like a Teek 1.0. It had the randomized loot, the Furiona V rule set where you don't have no drop, you have the free trade. You can trade anything, anything that would normally be no drop or quest items, or outside of a very limited subset of items, you can pretty much trade anything. Now, some things do get costly, so you have to pay up, but you do have the ability to buy stuff that you're having trouble finding drop. Gear comes a little easier that way. Then you throw in the random loot on top of that, where all the mobs, rare mobs at a certain level, will drop a similar pool of loot. Makes it easier to gear up, find things that are, usually perma-camped, things like that. I like the rule set of Mischief. Teek, I think, has kind of run away. The economy's kind of gone off the rails. Player base is not always the most friendly. I found helpful people when I was on Teek, but I've heard a lot of stories of people not being so friendly over there. So I was wondering to give Mischief a try. Originally, I played a paladin. I was very involved in the Firestormers Guild on Povar. I played from the Shadows of Lucklin. My brother got me involved in EverQuest up until the Buried Sea. I was an avid raider, raided Plains of Power. Our guild was one of the ones that were in pre-nerf Gates of Discord. We didn't clear pre-nerf gates, but we were in there. We were struggling like a lot of guilds. We had our own attrition like a lot of guilds, but I remember those times fondly, being able to get together, spend hours, it seemed, banging our heads against the wall, trying to figure out where we were, coming short, trying to come up with creative strategies to overcome content that was way overtuned at the time. Even the top guilds that were able to clear it were still saying, yeah, this is pretty difficult, even for us. So my rating dropped off in the Serpent Spine. I was starting to taper back, had just gotten married, was out of college, starting a new job, all those kind of things that kind of, your playtime starts to dwindle and dwindle. Then, several years later, kids just couldn't pick up EverQuest again. But I'm back now, have a little more playtime, some free time when the kids go to bed, sometime on the weekends, things like that. So I do hope to, while maybe not get back into hardcore raiding, be able to experience some of the content along the way. So I chose Mischief because it does have that easier rule set with the random loot and the free trade, and it's a little more established. So there's going to be players that really, want to be there and enjoy being on Mischief and the people they've found on Mischief instead of, Teek, where everybody's racing against everybody and just trying to be the first and the best and to hell with everyone else. So that kind of thing gets old, and I'm a little too aged for that kind of toxicity. I did actually start characters on Oakwynd, which is currently in the Serpent Spine, which is close to where I trailed off. but I do very much appreciate, especially at lower levels, having the mercenary around. And since Mischief is one of the more popular servers that's already past Seas of Destruction. Alright, there's level 3. I do have that merc available. That was kind of a bonus, so I decided to give Mischief a try, and that's why I am here. I do have characters still on Povar. I have my heroic characters at 100 from the anniversary event last year on Furiona V. I do have a couple characters I started on Oakwynd, but right now it's just so slow trying to level and progress on Oakwynd, especially at the lower levels when nobody's still grouping at that level. Very hard to find groups, and it's just a lot slower. Even with the 30% experience hit here with the merc, it's going a lot faster than it is two-boxing on Oakwynd. So I have a Druid Beast, I think, combo on Oakwynd, and at the lower levels, it's just so slow. So I enjoy having the merc. If you have a higher level tune that you can get gear, or you can, do the DS leveling method or something like that with your low level, it'll go faster if you can solo. I am taking a pretty significant experience hit having the merc. I think it's like 30% less experience with the mercenary out. Especially at low levels, it's really not too much of a hindrance. I mean, my first level 60 tune took me a year and a half, I think, from Shadows of Lucklin into Plains of Power, but this character, she's taken me about 2 weeks. We'll go through kind of my leveling path, my plan for her as a cleric, since I have that extra undead oomph. Being able to go to some of the more undead heavy zones gives you that little bit of an edge to get through the content a little bit quicker. Clerics, of course, aren't known for their DPS output. If you're something like a paladin, I would also recommend this path because you'll be able to do that slight more DPS edge to the undead mobs. Now, if you're a class that can snare, like a druid, berserker, I think has their snare by low levels, ranger, necro, shadow knight, bard, if you're one of those classes that has a snare, I highly recommend going to Plutal Caverns. It's got an experience modifier that is out of the world. There's a reason that most people go to Plutal Caverns, because it is so stinking fast. So if you're a class that can deal with running mobs, your merc will take care of them a little bit, but if you get overwhelmed, they will run away, which makes for a very bad day for you. I recommend having a snare, being able to stop those mobs, beat on them until they're gone. Makes it a lot easier. Now, at low levels, the fungal fiends and the toadstool guys, reishis, whatever they are, they don't run, so you can stay in Plutal even without a snare till about 10 or so as a non-snare class, maybe 15. But once you get into those recondite bandits, you really want to be a snare class or have somebody that can snare with you. It just makes life a lot easier in Plutal Caverns. But I do recommend going there if you're one of those classes because it is so much faster. There's level 4. If you have a 2-box and you can handle a little more with 2 mercs, more power to you. But with the Cleric and Paladin, especially having the lower DPS and needing that little bit of an edge with the undead mobs and also not having access to a snare, I definitely recommend a route like the one I'm going to take. So I'm going to be focusing mostly on undead zones, or zones that have a high percentage of undead mobs to get through, just for that reason. So here we're starting out in the Newbie yard. I like Shar Vahl. This is Shadeweaver's Thicket. One, because if you are one of those classes that can go onto Plutal Caverns, this is right on your way, so you're leveling through the Newbie yard as you're going into Plutal Caverns. But here there's a lot of undead. Now, I don't have my nuke, so it doesn't really make a lot of difference here. I'm not going to go at level 4 and get the nuke when I'm leaving at 5 anyway. So if I had done the spells, this would be going a little bit faster, but it's still pretty fast. The mobs come to you a lot in Shadeweaver's Thicket, so that's another reason I like it. I don't have to really go searching around for mobs. They kind of stay in this one little area, and the Plane of Knowledge book dumps you right into the Newbie yard. You don't have to run through a city or anything like that. Alright, so we're getting pretty close to level 5 here. At level 5, we do get Origin, which is our first AA. It's a short-term gate spell for classes, particularly that don't have gate. The Cleric does get the gate spell, so it's not a huge deal, but again, it's spell gem. You don't have to take up with gate or accidentally hit gate. So it takes you to your home city, which for her would be Freeport. If you have a chance on live to change your home city to someplace like Kellethan or one of those that starts you pretty close to a Plane of Knowledge book, I would highly recommend that. By default, you go to Crescent Reach, which is kind of inconvenient because you have to run all the way through Crescent Reach, out through Blackfire Moor to get to the Plane of Knowledge book. There's a lot of, depending on your race, there's a lot more convenient places to go. One thing I like at these lower levels is you're really looking for a place that has good mob density. And I think Shadeweaver's Thicket, you can see I just got jumped by like 5 mobs there. I didn't have to wander around. I didn't have to go searching for anything. They all came to me. So that makes it nice. One of the reasons I come to Shadeweaver's Thicket also, that higher mob density and not having to run around and find mobs that usually come to me. So as soon as we finish off these, I will head to Plane of Knowledge and sell all my junk, buy new spells, and head off to Befallen. So if you've never seen Befallen before, it's one of the old classic zones. It's one of my go-tos for Paladin and Cleric. If you've made it this far, I thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the adventure as I'm raising the Cleric on Mischief. Alright, this little guy here should get us to 5. Alright, and that concludes our time in the Newbie Yard. I hope you join me in the next video when we hit up Befallen and grind against some of the undead in there. Until next time, I wish you the best of adventures in Norath.